Morning, everyone. I think I like memes. I think they capture kind of the opinions, the ideas of a society in a quick image or a quick picture. And this is just a quick couple of words, I suppose. It says, name one time in human history when the group fighting to ban books and censor speech were the good guys. Remember Fahrenheit 451, right? Yeah. The fireman, right? He's coming to burn books. It reminds me of this BBC sketch, the Are We the Baddies, right? Like our uniforms have skulls on them. That's a little, that's not so good. The Allies didn't design our uniforms. Very funny, very on point for what's happening in our current world, right? Like this is like the public health officials in the back room. They're having a conversation, a little existential crisis. So I think this is kind of funny. There's an interview now on Omni One, and here it is. And I don't know how you can make this boring, but Alex Pearson succeeded in making it kind of boring. There was kind of like a drag, this interview. But anyway, regardless, I saw this yesterday and I tagged it. This is our quarantine hotels. Welcome to Canada, where you have the chance of spending $2,000 extra of your own money, or up to $2,000 extra of your own money, to stay in a quarantine hotel where you might get sexually assaulted, you might get extorted, and you will definitely get some very subpar food. Somebody did the calculations on this and said it was like 400 calories. And they spent a lot of money on this. So let's go through this thread. Is Canada a first or third world country? Here is a thread on my girlfriend's experience in a mandatory quarantine hotel. Love is not tourism. Love is essential. Hotel quarantine. Ignore the fact that she had to pay for a PCR test in the States, as well as book her flight here, $1,000, as this is expected and respected during these times of a pandemic. I don't think that we need to do that, but all right. Ignore the fact that she had to be on the phone for 5 hours and book a mandatory hotel stay at a designated government-approved hotel. Here we go. Jordan, and this is the person who was impacted by this, and the person interviewed, I believe, in this clip, but I could be wrong, but I believe this is the same person. I think this is the thread that goes with this interview. Lands at the Montreal Pierre Elliott Trudeau Airport at 1:30 p.m. and is given an additional PCR test. Lucky, it's free. And she's transported directly to the hotel that she booked. She is given a choice of 5 meals to pick from for dinner, to which will only be served at 6:30. My girlfriend was starving before, being that she hadn't ate anything since being on the plane. The hotel offered no free snacks in the meantime. My girlfriend toughs it out and waits until dinner time. 6:30, the food is not ready. 7 o'clock, food is not ready. Keep in mind, my girlfriend is having a headache now for how empty her stomach is. She's also not allowed to order food, and she cannot call the front desk because they took out the phone in her room. So no hotel phone. Sorry about that. People were calling too much. That's just, it makes things busy. 8 of 20. Finally, 5.5 hours later of not eating a meal at 7:45, they knock on her door and leave the food outside, which comes essentially in a doggy bag. Not only is it not what she ordered, but it came with no beverage and the food was cold. My girlfriend obviously swallowed it down whole, not complaining. Fast forward to the morning, her breakfast is served only when it's convenient for them. Once again, she's served 2 pieces of bread, as well as a yogurt pack, a juice box, and 2 small packs of cream cheese and peanut butter. On the bright side, she's given water this time. This sums up a total of around 400 calories, he said. Family, pets eat better than these forced quarantine guests. What happens if you don't have the stomach the size of a pea? Luckily, my girlfriend got her negative PCR test result right away, but the scary part is she would have starved if she had to stay there 2 more days. The Aloft Hotel, along with other federal quarantine hotels, do not refund you if you leave early, so her one night, 2 dog meals of 800 to 1,000 calories cost her $1,300. That's almost $1 per calorie. And no, don't say the cost covers security as well, because she noticed not one single security guard inside or outside during her embarrassing stay. These hotels are cutting corners, taking advantage of desperate people during desperate times. They need to be held accountable. The federal government also needs to be held accountable. It seems the old man running these hotels are unaware of the things called social media, where social connections, social shame communities built all around the world for a cause are a thing. Please help our voice, blah, blah, blah. And they got picked up, right? So here's the interview if you want to listen to it. It basically says what I told you. She was in the hotel and she couldn't leave, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here's Michelle Rempel asking about the hotel quarantines and saying, like, we don't have any evidence really that this says this is a good thing, and now people are being attacked. Is this really what we should be doing? Here we go. And Patty Haydu says, of course women deserve to be safe, but
Upon entry into Canada, her passport was seized and she was forced into a taxi without knowing where she would be taken. She was forced into a federal-run facility under a federal duty of care by the Liberal government, and she was sexually assaulted. This is misogyny and a gross violation of her rights. The Deputy Prime Minister and the Health Minister have implied the victim shouldn't have traveled. Were they suggesting that she deserved what happened to her under their duty of care?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, every woman deserves to live a life free of violence and a life of dignity. But I will repeat, these border measures are in place to protect Canadians, and they will remain in place until such time that science and evidence indicates that it is safe to release them. The member opposite knows that this matter is under
upon entry.
Yes, of course women deserve to demand their safety, but this is being done for the safety of Canadians. Don't you understand that? This is for your safety, comrade. And if some people have to be sexually assaulted and some people have to be extorted, then that's just the cost of keeping everyone safe. Right? Oh, she's wrong. Yes, she's obviously wrong. And so it's very interesting. These were different cases as well. This person was not sexually assaulted. She was just abused by the hotel that imprisoned her, right? Voluntarily imprisoned her, right? Like she couldn't leave because if she left, she'd get a fine, right? So is that, I don't know if that's better. And you can't get a refund if you get a fine. And now they're trying to increase the fines. Okay, in addition to the draconian and very tyrannical travel restrictions that are in place in Canada, and I think more are coming. I think they're going to start stopping people from driving, and I think they're going to do it with gas prices. I think they're going to do it a soft way with gas prices. They're going to have the gas prices push over $2 a liter, and they're going to say, sorry, this is because of global warming. This Line 5 thing, I think there's a reason Trudeau's not jumping to this. I think because it's part of the plan. Anyway, regardless, back to this. We'll talk about Line 5 in a minute. We're talking about schools, right? We're talking about schools, but we will talk about Line 5 before the school segment is done. Okay. Anthony Fury says, experts call Peel guidelines to place children in solitary quarantine cruel punishment. Yes, it is a cruel punishment. They're talking about if your child has somebody in the classroom who tests positive in the classroom, then your child has the potential of receiving one of these letters from the Peel District School Board. And the Wellington Dufferin Guelph Health Unit adopted these guidelines as well, just so you're aware. But Ryan O'Connor says, well, these are the guidelines. So this is the letter you'll get. And the second one says, if you don't do this, there's a $5,000 fine. I covered that on yesterday's show. But here's the letter. If your child doesn't have symptoms and gets this letter, then the child has to self-isolate, which means stay in a separate bedroom, eat in a separate room, use a separate bathroom. If the child must leave their room, they should wear a mask and stay 2 meters apart from others. So you can't hug your kid who doesn't have any symptoms, isn't sick, and we haven't done this at all up until now, and everybody's been just fine. This makes any kind of sense at all? This is insanity. Okay, and any other children who live at the same address should stay home. They don't need to self-isolate in a separate room, blah, blah, blah. Adults can go to work unless the child develops symptoms. All of this is crazy and not at all acceptable. And Stephen Leasy, who is the education minister, is making an announcement about Line 5. He says, we're standing up for Canadian jobs, values, and prosperity. I'm proud to join Premier Ford Nation and blah, 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 other ministers as we defend the livelihoods of thousands of families supported by Line 5 in Canada's resource economy. So here's the education minister. When the education system is literally burning down around him, and he's trying to appease everybody by creating restrictions or allowing public health in specific sectors, Peel and Guelph, Wellington, Dufferin, to create these unbelievably damaging rules on pain of fines. And he's just worried about jobs. Here we go.
The choice is between the democratic nation of Canada producing it or a regime abroad that systematically abuses their own people, that has no regard for the environment, for labour, or for the Indigenous populations of their country. And that is a problem.
I wonder if he thinks that by ignoring his portfolio, he'll get moved to a portfolio that he wants to engage with. I've been messaging him about the Upper Grand District School Board having open racists on their equity and inclusion team who make statements like any system built by a white person is inherently racist because it was built by a white person, because of that pesky skin color, right? Oh, ouch, right? But he doesn't seem to care, and he doesn't seem to care about the damaging rules put in place either by Peel District School Board and other places that are adopting this. Or I'm not sure if this was the public health, Peel Region Public Health or whatever. I'm not sure who exactly came up with this, but whoever came up with it should be stopped working in their position in creating public policy, and somebody who can create sane guidelines around children should be employed to do the job, because these are not sane guidelines around children. Okay, period. If you do this to your kid, you're abusing your kid. There's a time if you did this, if you locked your kid in a room by themselves for 14 days because somebody in their class was sick, you would be arrested and your children would be removed from your care, because that's Munchausen's by proxy, right? Like Munchausen's by proxy is pretending somebody's sick to get the attention of them being sick. And in this case, I mean, that's not exactly Munchausen's by proxy if you're doing that at the behest of somebody's rules. But if you're doing that, if you just did that without the public health telling you to do that, you would be in serious trouble. There would be serious questions about your sanity. Okay? It's not okay to do this. You can't do this to children. That is not something that would be helpful to children in any situation. This does not keep them safe from COVID-19. Like, I worked in children's mental health for 15 years. This is not how you do this. I cannot believe that public health or anybody in any sense of responsibility is putting this out there. This is incredibly irresponsible. Like, I can't understate this. I don't work in children's mental health anymore, but this is not responsible. Okay, moving forward. And so if you want to get in on the lawsuit, Ryan O'Connor says, now hearing from parents across Ontario that public health officials have indeed been requiring self-isolation within their homes of asymptomatic children in dismissed cohorts since fall. This is an issue beyond Peel Region. Please feel to DM me if you've been affected. So there you go. There's a resource for you if you are interested. Here's Los Angeles. This is the Los Angeles I'm not sure if it's the health unit or what, but this is a whole sketch about the Los Angeles School District Board partnership with Microsoft to have a daily health pass that allows access, and it's like an app that you answer questions, and then it gives you a QR code that you can print off and then scan and take to school, and everybody's wearing a mask and has this QR code, so everybody's been granted access because of their Microsoft Daily Pass. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. Like, just like there is no way that any responsible person who has any idea about what children need would pass something like this in Peel or in Wellington, Dufferin, Guelph, or whatever, wherever they pass this garbage. Nobody who's working with democratic, free societies should be suggesting that in order to access basics such as education, you should have a daily vaccination passport or a daily health pass that you should have to pass in order to access society. It used to be that if you were sick, you were kind of backward shamed into going to work anyway, unless you were real sick, right? Really, really sick. And then otherwise, you better be at work, man. There's stuff to do, and I don't want to do your job, right? And now it's gone to a situation where if you're sick, even if you kind of sneeze a little bit, you should probably go get tested, right? Like that COVID's insidious. It might not kill you, but it might kill grandma, maybe, but not in any large numbers that are over and above the last 5-year averages. So, you might, but probably not. It's incredible. It's incredible. I'm not going to show you. I'll show you a little bit of it. The kid starts out saying, "Mom, I'm really scared about going back to school." And the mom says, "Don't worry. There's this Microsoft app." Here, hold on.
There's never been anything like this virus in our lifetime. Often, it's hard to see the effects it's having on our children. Has this conversation taken place in your home?
Mom, I'm scared about going back to school. I don't want
Test. The results are displayed in your daily pass, and if you choose to take your test off campus, you can post the results in your daily pass. And the moment vaccinations are available, you'll simply be able to schedule yours through your daily pass. But the real magic is your daily health check. Just answer a few simple health questions every day, and like magic, your entrance ticket appears.
Welcome back.
It's it's like the beginning. Again, I've talked about this before, although before it felt more like panels out of a comic book, and now it feels like the beginning of a fully produced movie. Like we're watching the reel of a fully produced movie, and they're saying like, this is the world that you live in, yay, right? They don't mention the people who don't pass the health pass, right? They get the big red skull instead of the happy blue check mark, right? And if you try and get to school and your pass is rejected, right? Then when the people in the hazmat suits jump out and you know, 4 pillars come out of the floor and you fall down a trap door, right? Like into the place where you're not allowed to talk about anymore, right? And everybody pretends that nobody saw because you don't want to become like that guy, right? Like they don't come back from there, right? But they do. You just have to wait 2 weeks and you have everybody in your house locked down. And maybe if you're lucky, maybe a 7-year-old sitting in their room for 14 days wondering why mommy won't hug them, right? Honestly, the people who are talking about following through with this, read the replies and weep for their children. It is very, very sad what is happening to our kids and their mental health, because the parents' mental health, they think they're doing good. They think that they're listening to good advice, and they're not listening to good advice. This is not good advice. It's not helpful to kids to be, it's not helpful for children to be worried like this about a cold that they are not going to die of. I've never once thought to myself, sending my children, 2 children died in the same Guelph school in 2018. I didn't think once about sending either of my children to daycare or school during that year. Does that make me horrible? I don't know. I don't think so, right? And yet 1 child, less than a usual flu year, has died from COVID-19, under 19 years old. We know this. This is in the regular records. But everybody is worried and wearing masks now? It doesn't exist in reason. It doesn't make any sense. It has everything to do with the media push. Everything to do with the media push. We're destroying a generation for nothing, for no gain. No gain. We haven't gained anything. In fact, we've lost freedoms over this. And it hasn't made us more safe. It hasn't made us better. Ontario teacher David Paddington sounds alarm over harms to youth. Quote, consider the stages of life of a youth between the ages of 12 and 20. Consider what milestones you might be willing to give up. There are so many, and they are losing them all. Right? Is this acceptable? You're not allowed to go to prom. You're not allowed to have your OHL playoffs. You're not allowed to have... there are so many, and OHL is just one example. There's countless sports that are being impacted by this. Countless leagues and dance classes and all sorts of stuff. And again, they're promising all of this safety, and it's not possible to deliver it. It's not possible. It's faulty. Okay. Health Freedom Ireland. Here's another report. So I've been talking about mask efficacy for a while, how well masks prevent spread of a virus, right? A cold or virus. And this is the latest one compiled from data from August 20th. August 21st, 2020. It says another damning review of evidence around masking healthy people. The conclusion states national and international public health guidance on the use of face masks is based on low certainty direct evidence of clinical effectiveness, indirect evidence that supports plausibility of effectiveness. Further research is urgently needed, particularly high quality studies that provide direct evidence on the use of face masks by healthy people in the community. The WHO has urged countries that have recommended the wearing of face masks by healthy people in the community setting to conduct research on this important topic. So it's saying that low certainty, so far the research doesn't bear out what we're doing, right? And I've shown you research before that says masks don't work. Here's 2 minutes of a doctor talking about how masks don't work. There's lots and lots of evidence that say masks don't work. And not to say that I want to beat it over everybody's head, but we're seeing mainstream news media talking about masks don't work. And I said the other day, I went to the States in the earlier mid-90s with my family, and we watched TV shows with commercials that had listed long lines or long lists of terrible side effects for drugs that were on the market in the US. Like, if you have this, you might get this or that or this, right? Like, don't take this drug if you have this, because the consequences of that might be this or this or this. And you're just like, wow. But we don't have that's called informed consent, right? If you want to take this drug, you have to be aware of these potential drawbacks. If you want to do this health intervention, if you want to do this to your body, you should be aware that this might have this impact on your body. Public health isn't telling anybody these masks are safe and healthy, and they might have these drawbacks. Public health is just saying these masks are safe and healthy and mandated. And they don't tell us about drawbacks. Isn't there a responsibility to talk about the drawbacks? Why is the newspaper? Here's the National Post saying face mask wearing has promoted an increase in skin concerns. They don't talk about impetigo, but impetigo is even worse. They talk about acne in this, but impetigo is an infection. It's a bacterial infection, and it's very infectious, right? It spreads. As well as you can inhale bacterial pneumonia back in through the mask. You can breed, because it's a warm, moist environment, you can breed bacteria in the mask and breathe it into your lungs. It's incredibly dangerous what's happening. But we're not being informed about these dangers, and that's really concerning, right? I was going to go through this a little bit, but I don't think I need to. Link is in the description if you want to read this. Here's employers mandating that people ignore their own body agency and comply because health says so, and you might get fined. Under pain of fine, you must surrender your body's agency, the choice of what you wear over the only air intake on your body, to us. Right? It says this. Ezra says, looks like some sort of ransom note written by a sociopath, which it is, come to think of it. It says, unless you are eating or drinking, your mask and or shield must be on properly at all times, including in this lunchroom. This is not an ask, this is a tell. Compliance is expected and appreciated. And then it's got 2 white papers. AHS has given their inspectors the authority to impose a $1,200 fine on any colleague working without a mask, face shield. MODs and management may also incur a $1,200 fine if not enforced this mask policy. All colleagues are to follow the mask policy. No excuses. No excuses. You don't get body agency. No excuses. Your body, my choice. Welcome to my lunchroom. Welcome to Canada, right? Here's your sandwich, right? If you're lucky, here's your sandwich thing, right? Here's a couple hundred calories. What are you complaining for, right? Okay. The NBA G League is investigating a claim by well-known Asian American basketball player Jeremy Lin that he was called coronavirus on the court. Is that a racial slur now? Don't go around calling people viruses, man. That's interspecies racism. Because, viruses are alive and humans are alive. Humans are alive. Justice Center breaking news. Appeal for Pastor Coates' release from prison set for March 3rd, 2021. So they're going to appeal, and that's going to happen on Wednesday. And I mean, I hope that they get somewhere. I think it's unconscionable that they're looking for compliance. They're looking for him to say, okay, you win. I won't do that thing that you're telling me not to do. That it seems that mosques are allowed to do. From what I've seen some videos of like pretty full mosque parking lots and empty cars. So where is everybody? How come some religions are allowed to gather and others aren't? That seems odd, doesn't it? And I guess if you're allowed to gather outside and you can protest for the release of an imprisoned pastor who refuses to turn his back on his congregation, I think that it's pretty incredible that we've got Canadian courts and Canadian prisons that say, yes, this is the right move. This is what we should be doing. This is for public safety. How does that stand up, right? In Alberta, here's an early tweet in the pandemic. I don't have a date for it. Oh, I thought I had a date for it. But it says, Calgary COVID-19 field hospital hasn't seen a single patient with the illness. And yet, we're in protect the healthcare system, right? We can't overwhelm the healthcare system. The justification for the destruction of industry, businesses, mental health, education, families was all based on lies. The problem is when the lies are easily provable, like in Guelph, we're still in red. We're going to talk about Thunder Bay in just a minute and what they're doing up there. But in Guelph, we've had the case numbers decline. We haven't had a real reason to be in lockdown, but we've been in lockdown for 45 days since December 26th because the government wanted us in lockdown. There wasn't any real stated purpose for the lockdown, and there wasn't any stated real reason for the lockdown. We have to lock down now because X, Y, Z. Now they're trying to make it about the variants. I'll show you that in a minute. And they're trying to make it about, I don't know about overwhelming the healthcare system, but they're coming up with different excuses. And it's a constant bombardment of like almost misinformation to shut people like me up, to stop people criticizing. Because if you criticize, listen, if you pick a mask mandate, right? If you pick one thing to focus on, you can look at my Upper Grand District School Board study on critical race theory. It will take months to deal with just that one little thing. And you can't, and you can have 100 things that are associated with it. Black brilliance groups, right? They're funding race-specific groups within the Upper Grand District School Board you get more funding if you're a specific skin color. It doesn't matter about how well you're doing. It just matters about your skin color, right? You can have a white kid and a black kid doing the same, and one will have funded supports and one will not. Is that okay? I don't think so. I think it should be based on needs, not skin color. But regardless, I couldn't deal with that because I had to deal with just the critical race theory being openly stated that anything built by a white person is inherently racist because it was built by a white person, that the board made in the president, that statement was made by the board to the trustees, and the trustees says, brava, you're so right. I said, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? They doubled down too. Anyway, regardless, you can't deal with more than one real issue at a time, right? So when we're bombarded with protect the healthcare system, so if you have a real case about protect the healthcare system, now we're on to protect long-term care, protect the elderly, don't kill grandma, right? And you don't have an argument for that yet. And as you build your argument for that, they've already moved on to the third or fourth other thing, and you can't build an argument for that yet, right? The variants. Oh, the variants. Oh my goodness, the variants. The variants are coming, right? Doesn't matter about Florida. It doesn't matter about any of these other things because they haven't reacted to these things. These things are things that are real, that are verifiable. You can look them up. Anybody who can be advising the premier would know about this. And yet, here we are, locked down and going into lockdown again. I don't think Guelph's going to see yellow before we get locked down again. They're going to lock us down again. For what? They won't tell us. They won't say this is what we're locking down for specifically. They'll say there's concerns about the variant and we have to get this early because that's exactly what they're saying in North Bay or Thunder Bay. I think that's Thunder Bay. So it's a constant moving barrage of moving and disinformation. And I think that it's because here in 10 years ago, I was talking about the H1N1 and the pharmaceutical companies being sued because they incited fear about how bad a pandemic was going to be in order to make money from the government. And they were sued by the UK government and they tried to silence whistleblowers. This is one of them, a 10-year-old warning. Jane Burgermeister, sorry if I got that wrong, but I think I got it right, had to endure a big pressure after exposing big pharma and governments when they tried to pull off the same scam in 2009. Maybe she helped to stop it then, or maybe it was just a rehearsal for this time around. Jane's research had to do with the fabricated nature of the pandemic, and she was right on, as you can read later on. She was fired from her job and had to defend herself from criminal charges, all of which she was obviously acquitted. Her warnings might have seemed exaggerated at the time, but the jab programs came to a halt, and with them the debate around forced vaccinations after many developed chronic narcolepsy. Vaccines were thrown out, Big Pharma kept the money. Her words make as much sense now as then. You can watch the videos. It's in German, but it's got the English subtitles. I'm not going to go through them. They're worth watching. Understanding what's potentially happening here. And I'm not saying that the whole thing has been fabricated. Not yet. But she said the whole thing was fabricated in 2009. She wasn't wrong. She wasn't wrong. And those vaccines hurt people. Okay. And so the numbers don't matter. I've talked about this before. COVID-19 case counts in Simcoe, Muskoka, and Thunder Bay have forced public health officers to act. And I was like, what case counts? This guy, oh my goodness, this guy. They look down their nose at us. Look at the framing on this, right? And I don't know if he's framing this, if this is just from his laptop, but goodness me, they look down their nose at us and they do it in action, right? As they're addressing the people who they're supposed to be representing. They're supposed to be helping, and they're not helping. Thunder Bay's rolling 7-day average of new cases has more than doubled since this time last week to 38.8, and local officials are recommending that all schools move to remote-only instruction for the next 2 weeks. Nightmare. Meanwhile, in Simcoe, Muskoka, the rolling 7-day average of new cases is up 40% from this time last week and now stands at 43. The Simcoe, Muskoka District Health Unit is also reporting a total of 184 confirmed cases of B117 variant, accounting for more than a third of all confirmed cases involving a variant of concern in Ontario. The main issue here is that, for me, the variants of concern, here we have a substantial amount of the UK variant. It really commenced with the very large and tragic outbreak at Roberta Place that affected some of other facilities as well. But we now see it spreading in the community in greatly increasing numbers, probably triggering the rise we have seen in case counts overall. Simcoe Muskoka's Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Charles Gardner, told CP24 on Friday afternoon, "We are acting early, in that we are just seeing this now. I did not want to wait longer. I wanted to be prompt about it because if this is the beginning of a rise, the longer you wait to act, the worse it will be, and the longer it will take to bring under control." They're speculating. They have no clue. They're speculating. The numbers do not. Here's the Simcoe health maps. As far as I can tell, and maybe I'm poor at understanding what's happening. But as far as I can tell, the District of Muskoka, which is part of this, has no people in the hospital. And these two, Simcoe, Muskoka, and Simcoe County, have 19. So for that many people, it's worth destroying our entire economy. I can't imagine the amount of power needed to do this. I can't imagine the unchecked power that now is just being used. This can't be constitutional. This can't be the way forward. The way forward with draconian dictatorial powers based on we wanted to move fast to nip it in the bud, despite the fact that we've got indications that a whole bunch of places around the world are just fine, completely open, right? It's wild. Roberta Place on February 12th was reporting, this is Roberta Place long-term care home in Barrie, was reporting transmission has gone down quite dramatically. So we're getting very few new cases happening associated directly with that outbreak. And also in the community, in the homes, which is certainly a very good thing, Gardner said. So 2 weeks later, and now they're trying to say, oh yeah, it started there, and systemic. It's not exploding everywhere like that, as far as I can tell in the data. And this, I've been clicking around the map, so when you land on the page, I think it gives you the total numbers, and then when you click on the map, it digs into the neighborhood. But again, this is confusing, a confusing way to read the data. I don't know why there's not an Ontario standard. I don't know why every health unit has different web pages with different. A different look to the data. There's no ability to easily understand what you're seeing to say, well, this doesn't make sense, or this does make sense, or clearly this is ticking up, or clearly blah blah blah. It's very muddy. Even Guelph's data is muddy, and I think it's made muddy to be on purpose. But they blame this, and the lockdowns. I don't think the numbers matter at all. And here's another example. New Zealand, largest city goes into lockdown after one new COVID case. Anything above COVID 0, we got to lock down. That's it. Everybody's locked down. They don't want to stop. There's no intention of stopping. And nobody's really questioning the unbelievable power wielded by public health. Why not? Why not? How can public health, a year later, unilaterally lock down an entire city, jurisdiction, or whatever? For a case? For a couple cases? Because they think cases might explode? Despite all of the evidence to the contrary? We might, we're following this thing and these numbers are looking terrible. Bullshit, and I'll show you why. Here's Professor Norman Fenton. He says, the interesting implications for the accuracy of the official COVID-19 UK case data and the claim that it is critical to test people even if they don't have any COVID symptoms. No fancy analysis here, just the raw data of the Cambridge University study of asymptomatics. Over an extended period, an average of just 1 out of every 4,967 asymptomatic people tested in Cambridge was confirmed positive. Over that same period, ONS estimated that 1 out of every 141 people in Cambridge had the virus. Over the entire period, 43 of 10,000 pools tested positive, of which 84% were found to be false positives after confirmatory testing. So 84% of 43 were false positives out of 10,000. That's less than 15. I think that's less than 15 people out of 10,000 people tested positive of asymptomatic people. When the virus was circulating pretty robustly in Cambridge University, right? So that's an interesting study. I've talked about the Wuhan study of 10 million people testing the asymptomatic, or testing people who are close contacts of asymptomatic people, and none of them had virus. So that's interesting. Here's the 5-year all-cause mortality in Alberta per hospital, and this is gotten by a researcher. You can see 2015 to 2020. At Chinook Regional, 2015 had 75 people, 2016 975, 2017 967, 2018 1,000 people, 2019 885, 2020 629. 629. Okay, so, and if you look at the rest of them, they're all bang on normal. I've talked about how the 5-year average is seen as being normal for the all-cause mortality. All-cause mortality is how many people died of everything, right? There's no breakdown by disease. There's no, this is the number of cancer deaths, or this is the number of heart disease deaths, or anything like that. It's total mortality in the area. How many people died total? And it's very interesting. And then here's the totals. So 2015, 19,459. 2016, 23,439. 2017, 23,648. 2018, 23,939. 2019, 24,010. 2020, 22,409. So 2020 was the lowest since 2015 for mortality. Pandemic. Right? That's Alberta. Very interesting. Very interesting. Doesn't seem to matter. Ontario, I'll show you the modeling as well. Doesn't matter. They're going to throw us into lockdown. Doesn't matter. They're going to use variants of concern as a way to lock us down. Just you watch. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not going to be wrong. Last week, Dr. Theresa Tam and the Ontario Scientology table released. This is a funny thing, but I think the data is accurate. So, released their latest model that garnered criticism, ridicule, and shame at an international level. The now famous COVID erection had risen. So this is the models. We were supposed to be Canada-wide at 5,000. Or Ontario. This is Ontario only data. We were supposed to be at 5,000 cases in Ontario by the end of February. This was the model that Tam released and said that if we don't change, if we don't do everything, this is the gray with the current public health measures. This is where it was going to go, right? Yellow, gray, and then if we increase our health measures, it'll go down. But it was supposed to be 5,000 per day. I'll get there. Hold on. The COVID erection model predicted 5,000 cases by the end of February. Well, now that we're at February's end, this is the 26th, but we're at the 28th today. Ontario recorded around 1,250 cases. It would seem that the COVID erection encountered some erectile dysfunction. Since the COVID erection model has become flaccid, Dr. Tam needed another story to continue to propagate fear, public health by dread and distress. So she came out today to say that Canada was experiencing 75% more cases than we did in the spring peak. And here's that from 11:30 News. Canada's chief public health officer says the daily COVID-19 case counts are 75 times higher than they were at the peak of the first wave of the pandemic last spring. And here's Al saying the spring peak in Canada had 2,000 cases. Today, Canada reported 3,000 cases. That would be 1.5 times more cases, not 75 times. Dr. Tam just inflated the case counts by only 50 times, or what they call here in Canada, by a Fissman. I like the use of Dr. Fissman for measuring ridiculous inaccuracies. So yeah, 3,000 cases in Ontario, I suppose. Canada. In Ontario, there was about 1,200. Canada totally reported 3,000 cases, which is still not close to just the Ontario predictions. Canada and Ontario's public health officials and politicians have thoroughly embarrassed the discipline of public health and made a mockery of the field of medicine. From the MDs fake crying in the news to the high school teachers pretending to be biostatisticians, we've become a joke. Yes, we have. Yes, we have. Here's 4 counties in 4 states that share similar climates in the desert Southwest: Clark, Nevada, San Bernardino, California, Mojave, Arizona, and Washington, Utah. They all have different mask requirements at different times with different compliance, and it didn't seem to matter at all, did it? Here's the curve. Looks like a seasonal curve to me, and it's got the San Bernardino mask mandate in black there, the Clark mask mandate required, the Washington, and that was May 7th. Clark mandated full masks on June 26th, Washington mandated masks in October. Didn't do anything, didn't change anything, right? Like it's very interesting. The masks don't seem to work. They really, really don't seem to work. And so it's all control. I think it's all about control. Okay, vaccinations. Ms. Rempel is attempting to stoke fear into the public and continue to and contribute to vaccine hesitancy around the newly approved AstraZeneca vaccine. This is a deliberate attempt to undermine the confidence in Health Canada's rigorous approval process, not helpful in a pandemic. This is Ryan Turnbull. He is a Liberal member of Parliament for Whitby. So he's trying to say that this is Michelle Rempel contributing to vaccine hesitancy. That right-wing white supremacy. That's hard to say, man. Terrorist, her, right? That's basically what he's trying to say. And I'm desperately trying to say. So Michelle Rempel Gardner, she says, so in other words, they're not sure if the vaccine they approved today really works in the people most vulnerable to COVID-19. And this is in response to Rachel Elio. She says, of the available clinical trial data, the results were too limited to allow a reliable estimate of vaccine efficacy in individuals 65 years of age and older. Efficacy in this age group would target the most vulnerable, right? And isn't that interesting? And here's the interesting other survival. This is the CDC survival rate. 0 to 19 years is 99.99. Anything under 70 years is 99.5%, right? Like you've got a very small chance of dying of this. And yet they're looking at the AstraZeneca. And AstraZeneca, so we were approved for AstraZeneca But in England, they don't want the AstraZeneca vaccine. Like if you can have Pfizer or AstraZeneca, you choose Pfizer. But now in England, I've heard from people in England that if you get the shot, then you don't find out what you got until a few days later after they send you the mail with the name of the shot you got. What about informed consent? I would like to know what you're shooting into my arm, and I would like to know what are the potential drawbacks of shooting said thing into my arm. I saw a paper, like it was a newspaper article, and I think I retweeted it yesterday. Maybe I'll see if I can find it. But it was talking about how does injecting this group of ingredients protect me against COVID-19, protect me against any virus. And it was the list of drugs or the list of ingredients in the AstraZeneca vaccine. And I thought, yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. How does that work? It was actually a response to this tweet anyway, but it says, tell me how injecting this chemical concoction is going to help me. I'll wait. And here's the image, and it says what COVID-19 vaccine AstraZeneca contains. One dose, 0.5 ml, contains recombinant replication deficient chimpanzee adrenovirus vector encoding the SARS-2 COVID-2 spike glycoprotein produced in genetically modified human embryonic kidney, HEK 293 cells. This product contains genetically modified organisms. The other excipients are the rest I can't even read. Monohydrate magnesium chloride, hexahydrate, polysibate 80, ethanol, sucrose, sodium chloride, disodium etate dihydrate, water for injections. And it's 0.5 mil, and it's got water in it, eh? Very interesting. How does that protect me? I'm very interested. Incredible backtracking here from, this is a scientist at the Weizmann Institute, a leading Israeli COVID vaccine advocate. Last month, the magic has started. Last week, the impacts of the vaccine has been tremendous. Today, the vaccine only really works along with a national lockdown. Say what? So here's the travels on the tweet thread, right? The COVID-19 vaccine, the magic has started. And then you've got the impact of the vaccine has been tremendous by the same guy. And it should be remembered the impressive numbers of vaccine efficacy were measured under the current conditions of lockdown, right? Yeah, current conditions of masks and social alienation. In other words, the effectiveness of the vaccine measured is the amount of biological protection of the vaccine and the protection that results from public behavior. If the behavior changes, the efficacy is likely to decline, perhaps even significantly. Great, right? His excuse is nonsense. The entire point of the vaccine is that it's supposed to work in the presence or absence of other measures. When Pfizer and Moderna conducted the clinical trials, the U.S. was not locked down and people were not told to socially distance. I have warned you since January that 95% clinical trial figure cannot be trusted because the companies did not enroll nearly enough people at high risk. Now the Israelis are talking about going back into lockdown. There you go, right? Transmission rate nears 1, as officials warned Purim. Transmission rates are different than... They had 38 cases per 100,000, and they wanted to lock down again. Transmission rates were low, but cases were high. Transmission rates are high, cases are low. We got to lock down, right? Doesn't matter. They'll use an excuse. Here's Doug Ford saying, I know vaccines are on everyone's mind right now. I promise you getting vaccines in people's arms is the most important task, and we're firing on all cylinders. What about Sweden? What about Florida? What about Georgia? What about South Carolina, North Dakota, South Dakota, and all the other places that don't have vaccines in arms because they don't seem to need them, and they have their economy back. They can enjoy being free and all of that stuff. What about all those, Doug Ford? And he seems kind of dead in the eyes there, doesn't he? He's talking, but it's not... I can't wait for his term to be done. If Andrea Horwath gets in, and I probably... I don't know if I'll be voting because a rigged election's a rigged election's a rigged election, right? But if Andrea Horwath gets in, maybe people will understand that they're all terrible, and maybe parties are the wrong way to go about governing. Maybe parties, if you belong to a political party, you should be removed from your contention in office, and maybe the premier should be elected by the group of people that gets to Queen's Park, not by the party that wins. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. Here's Andrew Scheer. I talked about yesterday the infrastructure bank not getting anything done despite 4 years and $35 billion. This is Catherine McKenna and Andrew Scheer sparring. And Catherine McKenna sounds like a Valley girl. Andrew Scheer sounds like his usual typical laughing self. He's like, He's incredulous that they're so brazen and bold. The Liberals try and blame the Conservatives, saying like, well, nothing would get built because they're Conservatives, right? Basically, that's what they're saying. And they don't answer the question. Andrew Scheer tries to hold them to account, but I mean, everybody understands it's kind of a pantomime, shadowboxing. They're not actually trying to get to the answers because Aaron O'Toole is not going to win. Like, sorry, I'm going to get talked about Aaron O'Toole in a minute in the election section of the show. We're not quite done yet. But because Aaron O'Toole is not going to win. And it seems like the Liberals are going to behave like that. And like they know Aaron O'Toole is not going to win. And they're just not going to seriously engage with questions they don't like, which is nothing new, which is exactly what they've always done. This is the Liberal way of things. This is how the Liberals govern, unfortunately. And accountability, they think they're accountable to themselves, but they're not even accountable to themselves. Like in a sad way, they let their leader do whatever they want. Blackface, sure, so long as we keep winning, right? And for whatever reason, Trudeau's continuing to be popular with the ladies. I guess it's the hair and the socks, right? So that's the end of that spending part. PBO has told us, given that forecasted EI expenses far exceed projected program revenues, the EI operating account is on track for a cumulative deficit of $52 billion by the end of 2024. The Liberal government continues to refuse to disclose the balance of the EI account. Why? It's a good question. Why? Liberal MP says some cabinet ministers very supportive of basic income. The Prime Minister said in December that basic income was something he didn't see a path to moving forward on at the time. I bet you he could be convinced by some high-placed cabinet ministers. Ridiculous. Again, shadowboxing. I know where they want to go. You know where they want to go. We all know where they want to go. It happened right after the phone call with Biden. Interesting timeline, right? Interesting timing. Very interesting. We don't have the money for it. The PBO has repeatedly said this spending can't be made permanent. And that's exactly what UBI does. They've ignored all the other advice, right? That they don't like. So why not ignore this too? Employees laid off at Stanfield after company unsuccessful in renewing federal contract for medical gowns. They re-engineered their factory to make these medical gowns and bought equipment to satisfy the needs, blah, blah, blah. And then they did a tender, which is like you can put your bid in, and if you have the lowest bid, then you get the contract. But these guys bought material and stuff, and now they're locked out of the... They can no longer make the medical gowns. So sorry about your luck. Spending in liberal land, right? We've got to make sure that everybody's the same poor, right? Yesterday I talked about the gentleman who lost his son, and he was a big donor, brought millions of dollars. One of the very incendiary parts of the interaction and the question period was that one of the plaques was removed from the school that he built for his son, and another donor's plaque was put up in its place. And like, he doesn't know how many times that happened, etc. And this is the story for that. So this is big breaking news yesterday. I just wanted to show you that I mean, the news does print some stories of interest, but it's along very interesting lines. And the things that they ignore, I mean, they're clearly ignoring, right? Like, and they're not going to engage with it, like Florida, like all of the places that are open without restrictions. They're not going to play that game. They're not going to engage with that, right? But they'll make the current government look kind of bad. But I think it's more it's more of an apology tour than it is like meaningfully trying to hold them accountable. Okay, we're almost done, and I know I'm going long today, but whatever. I was saying Aaron O'Toole is not going to win. This guy has a column in the Ottawa Citizen that says intro videos are nice, but Aaron O'Toole needs to lay out where he wants to go, not where he's been. I think that Aaron O'Toole needs to talk about the things that are on people's mind, and like saying where he wants to go. I think he's laid out where he wants to go, and people have rejected it. And now they think that the Conservatives are reading the rejection as bad polling numbers because people don't know who Aaron O'Toole is, and it's because Aaron O'Toole looks a lot like Justin Trudeau, and that's why he's not going to win. He's trying to put out Justin Trudeau's platform better, which Scheer didn't win that way, and O'Toole won't. If O'Toole doesn't engage with the lack of the loss of civil liberties, if O'Toole doesn't engage with the tiny little Hitlers in public health, the tyrants in public health, the fact that provinces are not really doing anything to maintain Canadians' civil liberties and civil rights, if he doesn't engage in any of this, He's not worth the salt anyway, right? Why would anybody support him? You can't win. You can't win by shrinking your base, right? And I mean, like, Andrew Scheer shrank the conservative base when Bernier left and took a significant portion of the right with him. And they haven't returned to the conservatives. And if you think that the liberals are going to alienate their base with one of these scandals, then I think the conservatives have miscalculated about what the power of the media. But Aaron O'Toole is not going to win. And if he does win, I believe less and less that our elections are fair and even and worth the ballots. Really. I mean, like, it's unfortunate because I participated in an election. I want to believe that they're as above board as possible. But after watching what happened in the United States after Trump lost, I have zero faith in elections being counted faithfully. It doesn't, and maybe 90% of the election is counted faithfully. You only need 10% to win, right? Like, if 10% of the election is fraudulent, it's fraudulent. Sorry. So anyway, Doug Ford, government changing some Ontario election laws. Yeah. New legislation would increase campaign donation limit, tighten controls over internet interest group advertising. So if you've got one issue, right, like you have to not do that so much anymore, but they're increasing the limit that corporations double the maximum amount annual donation that an individual can make to a political party, boosting it to $3,300. So that's a lot of money. A lot of money. Money talks. I think that we should reduce it. I think that, like, people should seek it out. I think people should be incentivized to seek it out. But I think that we should reduce everybody gets $300 and a YouTube channel or like a CPAC channel, and you get your picture on the CPAC. And if you have a compelling argument, you should get the press and all that other stuff. But all this buying your own and $3,000 to donate and all this stuff, it muddies the waters. Right? It takes us to a place where Mitt Romney's standing there saying, corporations are people, my friends, right? And he knows that corporations count as people because he owns multiple corporations, right? Green report on Newfoundland and Labrador economic recovery delayed for as many as 6 weeks. So talking about election fraud, right? Like, because of the pandemic, they changed the fundamental core of the Newfoundland elections, and the chair of the Premier's Economic Recovery Team says the group is going to need an extra time to prepare its interim report for the government of Newfoundland and Labrador preliminary findings that were originally scheduled to be presented to the government on Sunday. Speaking to reporters on a teleconference media availability Saturday morning, Dame Moya Green said, "We're going to need a few extra weeks, maybe 5 or 6 extra weeks, to get the report done in a way that we're happy with." Originally, the interim report would have been presented a little over 2 weeks after what was supposed to have been a February 13 provincial election. However, the election process was postponed and altered because of the recent COVID-19 variant outbreaks affecting the Avalon Peninsula. All remaining voting is by mail-in ballot, and vote counting isn't expected to be concluded until the week of March 15th. Aha. Democracy? Yeah, sure, kind of. You know, you can believe it if you want to. 2 Toronto police stories to finish us off with. Here's Toronto police posting 20 hours ago. We recognize the right to lawful protest. It says, while we recognize the right to lawful protest. It sounds like Patty Haydu. Women should be and expect to be safe, but while we recognize the right to lawful protest, but the existing emergency orders prohibit large gatherings of more than 5 people. Right. So which one's a charter right and which one supersedes that, right? As a result of these orders, we're enhancing our enforcement when it comes to large gatherings. Officers will be dispersing attendees and issuing tickets as appropriate. Organizers of events also risk tickets or summons. It is important to note that summons can be issued later, and depending on the circumstances, officers may elect to do so. And here is the Toronto police officers kneeling in June of last year in the middle of the pandemic with Black Lives Matter protesters. I say, Gestapo hypocrites. How many Black Lives Matter protesters got summons after? Uphold our charter or you're not police, just enforcement for tyranny. Shame on you, protesting is a charter right. Stand for your oath or resign as police. And here's a sketch of a robbery suspect. The Toronto police are a joke, right? A sad, expensive joke on taxpayers. I'm sorry that we have to pay for them. I'm sorry that they're so hypocritical. I'm sorry that our leadership is so out to lunch that they're more interested in racism than they are interested in the wholesale removal of Canadians' charter rights and freedoms. That's scary. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, check out SpeakingMoistly.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful